Hey everybody, we're back with the Midweek Convo, your Wednesday conversation with the church, and I'm really excited to be back. I think last time I was here with John Ulloa, and that was fun to do, but when I was told that we could invite somebody really special to me and special in the community, I definitely wanted to be a part of it. So we're going to have a conversation with Captain Rob Ransweiler of El Cajon PD. And Rob, you and I go back a ways. I don't even know how many years.
I don't either, maybe 10?
Possibly, yeah. You weren't a captain back then?
No, I was not.
No, and we kind of met through leadership.
We did.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's this leadership program that's with the East County Chamber of Commerce and really kind of award-winning. And so we went through that, and I don't know if you were actually going through it. I think you were teaching. Is that right?
No, I think when we first met, because I went through class of 2012, best class ever. And then you and I went through the inaugural and now only class of masters, so leadership masters.
And you were, did you go through that, or you taught some elements of it too, didn't you?
So no, I didn't teach anything of leadership masters. I got involved in the retreat after leadership masters, and so I'm the day chair, or have been the day chair for the last few years for the leadership retreat, the 2-day Friday Saturday that we do on everything with Rebecca Collier and the other folks over at the chamber.
Legend, Rebecca, the legend.
Rebecca. I thought I turned that off. I really did.
Well,
I swear I did.
We've got to take a break now.
Yeah.
You never know who's phone calling Captain Ransweiler. You know, the thing about that too, just not to get off on a tangent on the leadership program, but so many real leaders, people that have become Citizen of the Year or serving in public office. I mean, some real legends. How many years has that program been in place through the chamber?
Oh, good question. And I want to say they're pushing 30 plus years right now. Yeah. It's definitely way longer than I've been around.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and some of the awards that have been given out, they're the names of people who have gone on before us. Yeah. And so I really suggest, if you want to check out the leadership program with the chamber, it's a great thing. It really is.
Yeah, San Diego East County Chamber, Leadership East County. So if you just Google it, it'll pop up, and contact Rick over there, and they'll get you signed up for next year's class.
Easy to do.
I know they're finishing up this year's class, and they're doing their leadership projects, which I think is a good transition for something else that you and I have done, because leadership projects out of the leadership class, in the class that I did, I had the honor of working with several great people in that, because they challenge you in your leadership class to come up with something different thoughts, different ideas, and they call it your future vision project. Right. And I was teamed up with 4 other people as a group of 5, and we created a group of people that like to run. And you're a runner, I think. A
little bit, yeah, I like to do that.
I think you like to run. And one of the guys in my group said, hey, there's no running events in the East County, so maybe we can create a group of people to put together a running event in the East County so that we can raise money in the East County for nonprofit businesses in the East County. So we did, and we created a nonprofit called Run East County Foundation, and it was all a part of the Leadership East County program, and we put on 7 St. Patrick's Day half marathons before this year's COVID disaster, and so no races took place in March. So we'll be back next year. We're probably going to rebrand the race and everything, but it's really awesome to see people come out and support different charities in the East County, partnerships with industry.
Well, tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, that's a real deal.
St. Madeleine Sophie Center, so it's a really fun thing, and so I've had the pleasure of your company on those types of events as well.
I had the pleasure of winning the very old man's division one year. It was pretty good. Of course, I brought my big medal and all that.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of projects through that have had an impact on East County, and I know not just through the chamber, but you and I have worked on other projects in East County and with others. I mean, there's a really wide variety of people, a network of people who have a lot of different philosophies, who have a lot of different worldviews. One of my best friends that just passed away this year was an avowed atheist. And we worked on projects that benefited East County because we could lay aside essential issues and go make East County better. And that's one of the great things about being here, is working on really big stuff and having an impact on it on a local level that people don't even know about. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of projects that people wouldn't even realize. That they just drive around and they see something done, and they don't realize that it came out of Leadership East County and through the different leadership classes over there, or the chamber itself. The chamber's been a phenomenal catalyst for some of the change that's been in the East County. So no, it's been wonderful, and it's allowed me to meet people out in the community and be able to do my job better as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because, well, for example, the homeless community.
Right.
Or people who are experiencing homeless, right? Was a real education. I was on that task force for 3 years, and it was incredibly educating. And then when people say, hey, nobody's doing anything about homelessness, and then 400 people are on this, on the street, meeting people, getting people off the street, going after one of the most complicated challenges that we have in East County, for sure. And then with COVID swooping in and all of that, it makes it even more complicated. But there are ways that anybody can get involved and have an impact.
Absolutely.
If you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do some work and give respect and grace for other people who may think just a tiny bit different than you do.
I could not have said that with more grace than you just did.
I bump into folks all the time that think very differently than I do. And some of them are nicer than me and smarter than me, for sure. But it's been excellent working together on those things. Let me just ask you, I'm sure, we do have some questions that people were able to send in that we want to respond to. But just give us an update on what it's been like with COVID and the police department's response to that, and how you enforce things, or what's going on there. And then obviously we've had some protests and some violence, which are two different things, right? So how's that been for El Cajon PD?
It's been good, right? And so I say that in a sense, I kind of have to feel like I explain the answer. So COVID, let's separate the two incidents, right? Because with COVID, change is kind of the theme word, because everything was constantly changing. And, if there's one thing a police department doesn't like, it's change. And the other thing they don't like is status quo. And so
that makes it hard.
So, every single day could be different. When the public found out about the health orders, so as, the county health officials went on the news, or the governor went on the news and announced what the health orders would be for that day and when things are going to go into effect, that's when we found out. So there was no pre-planning, like, hey, get prepared, we're going to do this or anything else. And so a lot of conversation was placed on, law enforcement agencies throughout the state and throughout the country enforcing health orders and, what was right, what was wrong. A lot of people calling in on businesses and letting us know, giving us the intelligence to know, this business is supposed to be closed and it's not closed, and having to respond to those and go out. And so every single day we just had to be open and willing for the change, right? So we didn't fight it. We didn't try to say, no, we're not going to do anything. We just had to accept the change and flow with it. So it was good. It was an exercise to be able to try to stay on top of things, make sure policies were up to date, and make sure we were handling things appropriately. And so we have a wonderfully diverse community and a very large Middle Eastern population. So there was some confusion about health orders too, and getting that translated into the appropriate dialect or language or anything else to make sure that everybody understood what they were supposed to do. And so sometimes it was just a matter of miscommunication, and sometimes it was defiance. And so we did a lot of education and took those opportunities and moved through that. And then, of course, the second question was the protests with the violence and stuff. And we are grateful that anytime somebody graced the city of El Cajon with their presence to express their opinion, it's been peaceful. I know that it was non-peaceful other places, and we stood ready to serve those communities as well, because we have a agreement with all of the chiefs and sheriffs in San Diego County to utilize resources in the event that something goes wrong in, say, La Mesa, downtown San Diego, or something like that. We can support them with some staffing and stuff. So, no, it was a challenge. You know, it still is a challenge. You know, with rules and questions and, you know, what about this, what about that? And it's been a really good opportunity. I've had quite a few opportunities to sit down with staff at the police department and just have a open, heartfelt conversation about making sure that we don't lose the message for the delivery, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, don't let the few people mess up the delivery. Like, don't get mad at that. Like, listen to the message that's trying to be pushed out and stuff like that, so that, you know, if we can do it better, do it better. I know that it made the news, so I'm not, you know, spilling any beans here or anything like that, but I'll give a good example. Sergeant Murphy was out on patrol, but forgive me if I get the time wrong, but let's say it was 2 o'clock in the morning for this scenario, and it was a report of some tagging going on in the city and graffiti, right?
Yeah.
And he pulled up, and all 3 people were still on scene, you know, actively tagging. But you know, they were tagging stuff, but their message was of peace. I mean, the word peace was actually in some of their message, right? And so, you know, Sergeant Murphy was talking to them, and one, if not all of them, expressed a desire to not be punished for doing something that was illegal, and said, you know, hey, can we paint it over, right? And what I'm the most proud of is, you know, we've done training on procedural justice, and Sergeant Murphy, particularly with an extensive military background and everything else, phenomenal leader in the department, and he saw that opportunity as just that, an opportunity, right? And so very easily, you know, somebody with less tenure or anything else could have just said, no, you're under arrest for, you know, vandalizing this property, kind of a thing. But Mike saw an opportunity to practice procedural justice and said, you know what, sure. Got their telephone numbers. They agreed to come back out the next night, and they showed up the next night. And you know, that's what was in the news recently, right? Was the pictures of them painting over the graffiti. But you know, you mentioned a second ago, people, you know, having the grace to listen to others and everything else. And you know, that scenario isn't. It's not a success for us, in the sense of. What really happened is that the people he was talking to, the people who were the suspects in the crime, they were willing.
Yeah.
Right? And so, you know, when the officer walked up on scene, you know, it could have been completely different. Had their attitudes been different, had their demeanor been different, you know, it might have been handled completely different. We might not have had that news story. And so what it really took was 2 willing parties. Sergeant Murphy to hear the opportunity and be open enough to allow that opportunity to be given. But at the same time, what made it a success was the fact that they were willing, right? And they asked the question. And so it was really a community success in the fact that, you know, the person recognized that they did something wrong and they wanted to atone for that. And, you know, they did. They came. They showed up. They kept their word, you know. And so, you know, it's really a win-win. You have an opportunity, meets an opportunity. He gives the opportunity. They take it. And we wind up with a massive win for the community, a massive win for the police department. So really excited. So when I say good, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I get
There's
it.
been lots of opportunities like that, you know, and we just want to make sure that we're moving forward, that we're listening and we're taking the message in and we're doing the right things.
You know, one thing that's important to me is that isn't an isolated case. When my kids were all in elementary school, and they're really old now, but when they were in elementary school,
Sorry, kids.
The principal, they know, they had a principal that it was legend to me, and he probably found out about this program somewhere else, but it was a caught being good program. And not to go into all the details of it, but it was reinforcing people just, you know, being good, and that popping up all over the place. Well, at Foothills, I get to catch people being good constantly. It's incredible. But I've seen it in the community. I've seen it with the police department. I've seen it with the city council having to make hard decisions. Some I agree with, some I don't, but just their heart in it. And it takes me back to when Harold Brown over at ECTLC was educating us in this homeless population, the challenge with people who are experiencing homelessness. And somebody's saying, what do I do when I see them? And he goes, introduce yourself. Ask their name. They have a name, and they'll be seen, and then you can go from there, because they're different, just like everybody is different. But treat them with respect, find out their name, and then a couple of human beings are having a conversation, just like Officer Murphy with those horrible graffiti people that weren't horrible at all, I'm sure.
He said it.
I said it. But you know, they're human beings. We're talking to each other. It's one of the main points, and I've been talking to people about the violence, right? El Cajon Police Department, not to besmirch any other police department, but it is not the Minnesota Police Department. It is not the New York or the New Jersey Police Department. El Cajon Police Department, it's kind of like when I've got people that take pot shots at Christians. All Christians are this way. All churches are this way. The only way we undo some of that, and there's some problems with it, the way we undo it is by having personal relationship, personal dialogue, and people seeing there are differences, and everybody doesn't get painted with one brush, you know. And I know a lot of El Cajon PD people. And even more, and I want to encourage people to do this. I went through the FBI Citizens Academy. I'm going to be going through the Citizens Academy that's available through the El Cajon Police Department. I've done a ride-along, so I have an informed opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right on all the stuff that I'm thinking about it, and people may, you know, take issue with some of it. But you know what? People can get involved that way and then see, how would you navigate that when this person comes around a corner and is holding this, and then you've got a tenth of a second to do something that could really have a huge impact. And to take it back a step, because you mentioned it, one of the questions that we had come up is, what kind of training does the El Cajon Police Department have to peel the layers off these really complicated instant decision situations?
So so let's just go overall general training, right? So the officers do roughly 6 months, just shy of 6 months, about 940, 950 hours or so in the police academy. Okay. And
that's the starting line.
That's just the starting line.
To get to the starting line.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's the starting line. Well, they probably put in equally about as much time. It takes 6 to 8 months to get hired as a police officer.
To get in there,
you know, and that's an interesting topic too that we won't drive down too much. But on average, 1% to 2% of people who apply to be police officers actually make it through the very rigorous background selection process.
Wow.
And so, you know, there's the various levels of applications, and you know, you literally have to explain your entire life. There's forms that, you know, it's not tell me about the last 10 years. It's tell me about your entire life. Like, what have you done wrong since you were a child? And it goes back quite a ways. And so,
we have that same application to be a member of Foothills. It's crazy. Such background checks. It's amazing.
So people get into this process, and then there's interview processes. And if you answer all of these questions, there's a couple hundred questions about, you know, drugs and prostitution and, you know, gambling and in finances and records checks on finances, you name it, right? And it goes all the way into all this. And then when you answer all those questions, then they hook you up to a truth or dare machine, I mean a lie detector, and, you know, polygraph, I think it's, it should be better phrased. Yeah. And, you know, they ask you if you were truthful in all of your questions. And, you know, if you make it through all of that, then you have to do an interview with administration, whether, depending upon the agency, our agency calls them captain's interviews. You sit down with me and the other captain, and we have literally just a conversation for about 10 or 15 minutes. to talk about why our community, what connections you have to our community. We love to hire people who have connections to our community. I'm very proud to say we literally just graduated a gentleman, he's in training right now, who grew up in the inner city, on a street that was extremely heavily populated by gang members back in the 90s. And he had family members that got caught up in that, and he didn't. And thankfully, so what does that bring? Have that interview with the captain and be able to say, I grew up here, and he has that connection to El Cajon. He has that passion for the community. So that's going to be awesome. So we have that one-on-one conversation, and then if we decide from there and you pass your background to hire you, then you get to do a medical and a psychological. And for a while there, we were losing a lot of people to the psychological exam for maturity reasons and stuff. But wow. So it's quite an extensive process just to get hired. Okay. So now you go into the academy. Now you spend 6 months training in the academy, and you learn the books. They practice the driving, the shooting, all the legal codes, all the radio codes, communications, de-escalation, psychological emergency response stuff. So police officers are all certified to do 5150 W&I certification. So the ability to take somebody in who's experiencing a psychological crisis. And so all that training comes in the academy. There is de-escalation training in the academy, which is where we're going with all of this, right? And so then they come out into the field, and they're going to do at least no less than 4 additional months of training in a car with a person. And then after they've completed that training, and I say at least because if they struggle at all during that period, we extend it. And if they pick it up right away and they're doing well, then 4 months is what they'll do outside. So they'll do approximately 10 months of 40-hour-a-week training before they're allowed to go drive around on their own, and before they count as staffing over at the police department. And so it's quite an extensive training. We've put all of our staff through a procedural justice training, and explaining to them the need, I kind of used the word explain already, but the need to actually communicate with people, to explain to them the process, the understanding that if you just walk up to a door and do your job and then walk away from the door on a citation, on a traffic citation, you leave people with kind of just, well, what now, right? And there's so many great examples of, people who can write citations, and the people who receive them drive away with smiles because they just understand the process.
I don't know if I've ever done that.
They understand what they've done wrong. They understand why it's important to, receive a citation. And there's all kinds of statistical data that shows that the number of citations can directly correlate the number of crashes. So the more citations you write, the lower the citation or the lower the collision rate goes.
Makes sense.
And so if we don't write any tickets, people drive faster and the number of collisions goes up. And so when we write tickets, the collisions go down. And so, and that would be the same for areas. We know we have areas in the city that we're trying to focus on that have more instances of speeders, right, than other areas. And for all you residents on Chase Avenue, I know what you're talking about. So we know. We get there as often as we can. And so, but if they see a car out there every single day, they will slow down. And we will have less collisions on Chase. But somebody else will be speeding on the other end of town. So it's a trade-off. So we try to spend as much time doing that as we can. And so the training is extensive. It's continuous. We're required to do post credits every 2 years. There's a lot of training that has to be refreshed, CPR training and all that kind of stuff. And the state of California is always requiring additional training here and there. One of the trainings that just came up is de-escalation, and a more formalized de-escalation class. We've always taught verbal judo and compliance, and called it different names, and we've always taught, I was a 15-year member of the crisis negotiations team, so communicating with people and trying to take somebody who's in crisis and have them think rationally before they do something is a difficult thing to do. And so, but that's what we're trying to do in a matter of a minute or two or several minutes or whatever time. It's kind of like the graffiti. Whatever time the person you're contacting allows you to have.
Sure.
And so we have plans. The COVID, we would be done with that training if it wasn't for COVID-19.
I bet.
Because we had all kinds of great training planned from the district attorney's office. So we have a great relationship with the district attorney's office, and they were going to be hosting this training for a lot of the agencies in San Diego County. So, we'll formalize that. We've had some in-house 2-hour training here, 2-hour training there over the years, but we were going to do another 8-hour just recently on de-escalation, and I know that that's a conversation that's active about de-escalating a situation before the use of force and stuff like that. So, yeah, lots of training.
So lots of training is the short version of the intensity of it and the intentionality of it. I know that, we're kind of divided right now. There's people on different sides of the spectrum. And so there's people that are protesting and they're shouting about different things and really, really passionate about it. And I know that we took a little bit of heat, not much. People were pretty supportive, but we've had people from our church who, by the way, are people in the community. I mean, that Linda Quiros and Peter Quiros family and so many others that just said, hey, we want to appreciate law enforcement that puts himself at risk, that puts himself through all this training, makes so much more money than pastors do, and they're out there day in and day out on the line. So we say thank you at Foothills, mostly by meat, by red meat, but certainly by feeding people. And so some of those people who just happen to be members of the church and feel that way, we're already doing stuff with the hospital. We were over at Grossmont Hospital. We were also over at El Cajon PD with Cupid Catering Food, which is some of the best. And
I like all the plugs.
Yeah, those are my people. Yes, maybe I get extra. But the thing is we took a little bit of heat because we, maybe that made a statement or something, and it did. It made a statement. We're saying thank you, and we're giving our appreciation as members of the community and members of our church. What the other side of it is the people that kind of took pot shots at that, some of them don't know that at the same time, we set up food delivery to our bus kid families. Hundreds and hundreds of bus kids that come here who can be in a problem nutritionally and, food sensitivity, in the sense of maybe they're not going to eat. And with our youth venture kids and all of that. So I think that, that it's important that we support all the needs of the community and that we understand that there are a lot and there's things that we need to work on. But because you're appreciating one side of it, it doesn't mean you're against the other side, and vice versa. One of the questions that was asked is, how do we as a community best support you, because you guys are out there and women are out there in difficult situations. So how can we best support you?
That's a very interesting question, and I back it up just a tiny little bit. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had the opportunity to be there when one of the food deliveries was delivered and stuff like that, and it was outstanding. So thank you very, very much for saying thank you, and thank you to the family that provided that and the caterer.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say that you have to do food deliveries or you have to do cookies or anything to that effect. Just a mere smile, a wave. Let the guys on the street know. I have a unique pleasure of spending more of my time in the community. And so I've been on the department for just shy of 25 years now. Wow. And so, I started out on the streets, obviously. I worked undercover, I worked narcotics. I did lots of really, really, really interesting things. And, a lot of our time is spent, kind of over and over again dealing with the bad point, right? Every single day, the officers don't go from parade to parade to parade to parade, they go from one radio call that is probably the worst part of your day, your month, maybe even your year, maybe your life. Maybe it was a car crash where somebody that you love died, right? Maybe you were the first person on scene where a 6-year-old child got run over by a car, right in front of you, and you're holding the hand of a child while they die. And you're listening to the parents scream and yell in your ear and all that kind of stuff. And when that's done, we send you to another radio call.
Yeah.
And so they constantly go from one call where it's the worst part of that person's day. Maybe they're upset at us, right? Maybe we pull somebody over on a traffic stop for speeding, running a red light, whatever, right? And they're not happy about it.
Right.
So it has a tendency to be negative contact. We don't, you call us because you're not, something's not right. That's why you call us. And so, when you pass somebody, waving with more than one finger is always appreciated, just to let the officers know, any agency, that the rest of the world is having an okay day, and that there are people out there that aren't mad at you, that believe in you. And so it's something that we watch out for. We have counseling services to make sure, because we're in the business of people, right?
Yeah.
Are we on the 5-minute marker?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. I saw you glance.
Well, she could have been pulling something.
But we're in the business of people, right? So we don't produce widgets. We don't sell towels. We don't sell beach balls. We are in the business of people. And so, if one of my officers is having a bad day, if they get it in their head that everything's negative, right, then their contact with that next person is not going to go as well as that next person wants it to go.
Yeah.
And so if I have a 23-year-old kid who is the first person on scene at a 6-year-old, I'm thinking of a specific incident, so I go back to this, and I was the second person on scene as a lieutenant. And I walked up to that young man, and it was in the middle of the afternoon, 3:30. People were getting out of school in the middle of a very densely populated part of the city, and nobody was speeding. The child just ran across the street, okay, and got hit, right? And they were on the ground, and I was there within 90 seconds, okay, of when he got on scene, and he looked up at me, and he told me police code for the child was dead. Right, 1144, right? And I reached down, I put my hand on his shoulder, and I told him, I said, what I'm about to tell you is probably the hardest thing you'll ever do in your entire career, but you cannot get up. You cannot and you will not leave that child alone. You will continue to work. We will call paramedics and everything else, but the mother was screaming, the community was assembling, and I told him, the minute you get up, it means that we've given up, and we will not give up. Do you understand? You will stay there and you will do your job. And so he did. That was probably the hardest thing I've ever done as a supervisor, to order somebody who I know is just but a baby in his years to stay down there, and even though the signs of lifelessness were obvious, to stay down there and continue to appear or try to continue to provide life support, and it seemed like a decade before the paramedics got up. And then when he got up and we sent the traffic division over to do the major investigation, we sent him to the next call, right? And so, we try to make sure that we provide services for the officers to communicate, to work through that. So if you come across somebody who's not of their best self, we expect them to be of their best self. We expect them on every call. I expect them to get up and get back to work, and it's a very difficult thing to do. And so people are human. You mentioned earlier that people at this church are members of the community. Well, so are the members of your police department.
That's right.
Right? We're fathers, we're dads, we're coaches, we're church members. I know for a fact we have church members here.
Right here at Foothills.
Right here at Foothills that are members of the Oklahoma Police Department, San Diego Police Department, and everywhere else.
Yep.
And so they're human, they're fallible. They encounter stress and everything else, and we do our best to try to take care of that, because that's what we provide to you. That's what we provide to the public, is that service, and we expect him to do his best when he's out there representing you.
You've done two things in this short time that we had together. One is you made my hardest day seem way easier. than some of the things that other people are going through all day long. And secondly, I think unfolding it to show the humanity of it and the challenge of it, I think it really helps the conversation. I think this is the kind of conversation that can bring people together as human beings, and rather than continue the divisiveness that's going on right now. We're running out of time, but I just wanted to let you know that, and I think you already know this, but Foothills is a praying church. And we're for sure praying for you. We're praying for law enforcement, and we're praying for those people that we're teaming up with you on to help, that are going through a really challenging time, a really challenging life, and making poor decisions. And just like Mark Hoffman has said at the National Day of Prayer, government and church and business working together, doing their part, makes the place that we're planted better. And I don't know any place on earth, I don't hear rumors of other places that do it more diligently than we're doing it here. And it's an honor to do it with you. I appreciate you taking time.
It was an honor for you to make a phone call and give me an opportunity to come out here.
Right on.
So,
well, it's always good being with you.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, God bless you guys. You know what your prayer requests are for now.
Thank you.